All right, hey everybody, welcome to the Coding Zoo. If this is your first time joining, my name is Shane. This is the Java Building Blocks playlist. So in today's lesson, we are going to go over how to create variables in Java, how to create variables using primitive data types. If you are new to Java and you're not familiar with how to create variables or what the primitive data types are, this video is for you. Stick around, we're going to jump right in. All right, so hey, let's get started. So on my desktop, I've got this class called primitive variables. I've got it in project for our lessons. If you want to see how to create this project, see previous lessons, it'll show you how to do that. I'm going to jump right into this primitive variables class that I've created. Now I've created this class underneath a folder called lessons basic. It's called primitive variables. I've added a static main method. So here's my class. Here's my static main method. So this is how you would run a particular object or Java program using main. You could run it from the command line. So it's a static method, which means that you don't actually have to create an object to run what's put inside of this main. But that's kind of beside the point. We'll cover more of that when we get into creating objects. Let's jump into creating variables. So I've got a class and I've got a method. I'm going to create a variable in this method. So first thing you should know is Java methods are statically typed. That means that you have to specify a data type. You have to specify what the data type is up front. There are other languages like JavaScript, etc., that aren't statically typed. Java is. Now, one key difference with that is you'll know before you ever run it whether you set that variable to something that it can't handle. So, and I'll explain more of that in just a second. So, Java variables are statically typed. So, the first variable I'm going to create is a string. So, I'm going to create a string. So, uppercase S, T, R, I, N, G. And I'm going to put name. So the type is string and the variable is name. I'm going to put first name. So when you're creating variable names in Java, you want to use camel case. So if you look at the classes here, primitive variables, well, that's called Pascal case. You have uppercase P, uppercase V on the words in the class name. With variables, it's called camel case. That means the first word has a lowercase and then the second word has an uppercase. So first name equals, and put a double quotes, type in my name, and I'm going to put a semicolon to end that line. So here I have a string variable called Shane. So I'm going to print that out, system.out print line. My computer's going extra slow today for some reason. And I'm going to type in the first name. Okay, so I have a variable. It's called first name string. Is this data type, and it equals Shane. So I'm going to print out this variable. So when I run this program, this variable is going to cause it to allocate memory, and in that memory in the computer, it's going to put the name Shane, and then it will read that value in memory and print it out. So I'm going to right click, choose run as, and I'm going to do run as Java application. Now you should see in the console it just ran at the bottom here, and it printed out the word Shane. So we successfully created a variable called first name and set it to the value of Shane. So I mentioned in Java, variables are static type. So I'm going to try to set the string variable first name to a number. Let's see what happens if I run it. So first name equals 2. Well, it won't let me run it. It won't even compile it. So you get a compilation error. You get this X on the left side here. It recognizes that I'm trying to set the string variable to something that's not a string. I'm trying to set it to a number. So that's what we mean by statically typed. It helps you find errors early on versus running this later and realizing, oops, you made a mistake, and you have to debug it and find out later, which is kind of time consuming and a bad thing at times. So I'm going to turn that into a string by putting double quotes. And now I have first name equals, well, it's a number, but it's wrapped in double quotes. So that makes it a string. All right, get rid of that. So that's what I mean by statically typed. All right, so let's very quickly go over the other primitive data types. I'm going to cut and paste some code that I prepared for this lesson. This will make it a little bit quicker for us. Feel free to stop the video and study the code in depth, but I'll go over each one. So I'm going to cut and paste this here. All right, so let's get rid of that. And I have a float there. All right. Make this where you can see it a little bit. Whoa, that's a large number there. Okay, so the first primitive types we have here are numbers. The first one I have is a byte. So a byte is a data type that allows you to store a number of negative 128 to 127 or 128. I think it's 128. I need to double check that. It's been a while since I looked at that. I'll put wording up here I'll put wording above to let you know whether it's 127 or 128. So if you look at short here, or you know what, I could just try it. Let's try that. 128. Oh, doesn't like it. So the compilation with the static typed variable tells me, well, cannot convert an int to a byte. So I think the most it can handle is 127. Now, the next one is a short. So a short is a step up from a byte. It can handle larger numbers. And then you have an int and a long. So a short handles negative 32,768 to a 32,767. So why don't I just use short for even places where I could use byte? Well, you wouldn't want to do that because if you have a number that'll never be greater than 127, then you want to use a byte because you use less memory. So when you create a variable like this, whether you put 1 in it or 2, or whether you put 32,767, it's going to use up so much memory. So for example, a short uses 2 bytes, a byte uses 1 byte, an integer uses, I believe, 4 bytes, and so forth and so forth. So the next primitive type is integer. Now it can hold a number from negative 2,147,483,648 to 2,147,483,647. I'm not going to keep saying these numbers. I think you get the gist. Each of these can hold a bigger number, and if you don't need to ever hold a bigger number for a given variable, then you would use the smaller one. All right, so we have a byte, a short, we have an int, and we have a long. So look at a long. Long can get quite large. Now, then we have floating points and doubles. You can hold basically, as you see here, decimals. So both float and double are floating numbers, floating point numbers. They're basically decimal numbers. In most cases, you want to use double. If you're short on memory, which in Java these days, with cheap as memory is, float would save you some memory. Float is 32 bits, and a double takes up 64 bits of memory. In most cases, you're just going to want to use double instead of float. All right, so just to rehash, we have a string variable, we have a byte variable, short, integer, long, slowly getting bigger in numbers. We have a float and a double, which can handle decimals. Doubles usually the better to use, although it uses more memory these days. That doesn't matter much. Next, we have a char or a character. So a character holds, well, you guessed it, one character. So the letter A is a character. B is not a character. That's a string, so that won't work. N is a character. So I have a variable that holds one Unicode character, one character. Next, we have Boolean. So Boolean is either true or false. My name is Shane. True or false? So in this case, it's true. So this Boolean variable would be equal to true, not false. And we've already gone over string, so we delete that. So let's go ahead and print these variables out. I want to show you that it is indeed creating these variables in memory. And we're going to print them out at the very end of the program here. So I want to, let's grab that one. I'm going to cut and paste. All right, and I want this character variable. I'm going to print it out last, and Boolean variable, print it out. All right, let's go ahead and run it. And there we go. So we printed out my name, the string variable, printed out the byte variable, we printed out the short, the int, the long, and we printed out the float, and we printed out the double, and we printed out the character in and the Boolean false. So that's it. Not much to it. That is primitive variables in Java. That's how you create a variable, and you can actually print it out to the console, print it out from memory. So I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, leave me a message below, and I'll get to you as soon as possible. If this is your first time watching the Coding Zoo, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, click the subscribe button below, and you'll see a bell right next to it. Go ahead and hit that. That'll let you know when we get upcoming videos. Thanks for joining. I appreciate you watching the video. If you have friends that would like to learn how to program, send them our way. We'd love to teach them. So that's it for today. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see you later. Bye.